Man, life just can't get any better. Look, look. You looking? This great.
Yeah, there is one over there.
Carol, did we expect Russell to be here?
Yes, and you know, there's a truck out on there with the four ways on that. It looks like Russ's truck out on.
Does he have a Ranger?
Ooh.
I don't know what brand it is.
I think it's got a flat tire.
It was like a half
Oh.
pickup truck.
I saw
Poor
something.
Russ.
We can go out and check on him, see if he needs help.
But I don't, I always turn in at the bottom.
Is Russ
driveway.
Anybody have his number?
Yeah, I
When I was
do.
walking in the door, it's
I
like,
do.
oh, yeah, looks like Russ's.
Is it in the law?
We have time. It always
No,
was
it's
our
not.
Russ's like straight across from,
Where's my phone?
like you can see it when you come and walk in the door, it's like straight across.
Where'd I put it?
Diane,
Oh, you know what? My
Right out this door, Diane. You want to go right out this door, you just can't go back in that way.
Can I prop it open? I'm just kidding.
Hey, how's it going, Chad?
It's okay, yesterday I thought I had to go to EAC.
Oh, really?
It's like I said,
Oh, you
went
went
to
to
a
a
right from EAC meeting tonight, it's like Monday's like 2 days long.
I know. I
crowd
agree.
is
I still want to go get my phone.
So that's
constant.
Wednesday.
For 3 hours, they were shouting.
Kathy, are you going out there? I'm getting my phone. And on the phone.
We call here. Call.
She's
Yeah.
getting her phone to call him.
Drew, I just want to let you know that Winfield will not be able to come. I think you said, did you see the email? Okay, he wasn't feeling good. And then Michael Patero resigned. Okay. Wanted to make sure.
He has health issues.
Course.
Yeah.
I have about 30 years in the highway safety industry. So
Yeah, he has health issues.
WBeams, Thrivings, all those kind of bridge connections.
Who's taking?
It's a contractor in Pennsylvania that's trying to get into
But
the
we have a
industry.
quorum
You have to be
of voting
certified
members, so we're
with
okay.
either the PennDOT course or this one.
So as soon as Kathy gets back, I'll call the meeting.
It's good.
That's interesting. I didn't know there was such a
It's fun.
criteria.
Get through. I can probably say it with my eyes closed at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Now, is it a single session for 8 hours? You have a
it's
couple
tomorrow
sessions split
too.
up?
Trying to change his
Tomorrow,
tire.
and now I'm 3 chapters behind because it took me forever. These people, I mean, this is the thing. You're dealing with people who are roadway laborers, right?
Yeah, not IT guys.
No. I've been in
Carol, do you
Cincinnati.
know
When I taught in
still able to
Cincinnati,
read his email and so
City,
forth? Is he
Cincinnati,
paying attention to email?
30, 40 people in the class. I would say 3 of them were
Oh, no, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm an Alan.
couldn't take the exam.
I tried calling her.
They can
I
drive
mean, Alan.
plow or
Getting services.
Respond to email, do you know?
So it's difficult.
When I talked to him, he said that he's
I mean, Roger's literate, but
coming.
Right.
He has to rest, so I don't think that he's going to participate.
No, I just wanted to reach out to him via email to wish him my best.
I still have him on.
Yeah, he shows
Yeah,
up.
I'll just send him an
He is,
email.
and I meant to
saying
bring a
that.
card when I tell him I drove right by
you see
the
the notifications
drugstore.
that people will pay their IT person to come up and say, I don't know what's wrong. They're like, do you see this red
Yeah.
exclamation point? Say, I don't know what's wrong.
No, the turn it on, turn it off is a real thing.
Oh, that's
real. I mean, that's just.
I do IT
No,
marketing.
the turn it on, turn it off is a real thing.
Oh, that's
real.
real.
That is a real thing. I mean, the turn it on, turn it off is a real thing. Oh, that's real. That is a real thing. I mean, the turn it on, turn
He's
it off.
so hard to get hold of. He's so hard to get hold of. He's so hard to get hold of. He's so
Jennifer?
Here.
Kathy McGovern?
so
Jennifer?
Here.
Laura Ray? Kathy McGovern? Alan is absent. Cheyenne Reed? Laura Ray? Kathy McGovern? Chad Heibecker is absent. Cheyenne Reed? Laura Ray? Janine Bonham? Chad Heibecker is absent. Cheyenne Reed? Laura Ray? Janine Bonham? Chad Heibecker is absent. Cheyenne Reed? Laura Ray? Janine Bonham?
There we go.
Yay!
Okay. Russell Sutton is absent. Winfield is absent. Kurt Balch is here. Carol Schneider is present.
Mike
And-
Pitaro is
Yeah, I'm gonna say something.
Text
No,
me.
no.
Oh, you what?
He just resigned.
Did he?
I'm not sure why I don't see
just
Henry's
texted me
name on
today.
here.
Harry?
But Harry, I'm sorry, but you're present.
I am.
Yes. Oh, there we go. I see. I already had marked you in, that's why. Okay. So we were to be joined by Michael Potaro, another associate member, non-voting status, but he just informed us this afternoon that because of health reasons, his physician discouraged him from participating in getting involved in yet another thing. So his letter of resignation was, of course, sorrowful. He wanted to join this group. So at any rate, I suggest we just move forward with the membership we have this year. I think we're pretty well stocked with active people. So anyway, yeah, that's more an announcement than anything. So with that, let's pledge allegiance to the flag. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay, and so Harry Vitchik is here as junior council member. Moving into new business to introduce Kurt Balch, who is present and a new member, associate member of the committee. So welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Drew. Welcome. Hopefully it won't cause too much trouble.
And so just so you're aware, you're with a non-voting status, but you're free to participate in the discussions and so forth, share your insights, and you're also free to participate in all the volunteer things that.
Twist my arm, right?
Yeah,
I will try my very best to keep my mouth shut until I have something genuine to contribute, but for me, that's very difficult.
I would say if you wish to not have your arm twisted, you might be better to sit next to someone other than the woman on your right. Anyway, welcome to the EAC. Okay, so jumping right in, the new business is a discussion and recommendation regarding plans being developed for the Heller Barn reconstruction phase 2, as well as development of a master site plan for the Homestead, Heller Homestead Park. And so I understand that Council President is here to give us a presentation on this. So
Well,
Priscilla?
Actually, the council president is now Laura for this year, so I'm just a councilwoman.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Do you mind me sitting
I
here?
was out of the country and therefore not aware of all of this, so congratulations.
We're a team,
Laura.
so.
But Priscilla, we welcome your presentation.
Well, thank you. And
Move over to the table.
well, let me.
Are you sure?
I'm fine, yeah, please do
If you're
that.
comfortable here, that's fine.
Yeah. So I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. And as you know, my name is Councilwoman Priscilla DeLeon, and I'm working on this project with Council President Laura Ray. And we've been members of the Saucon Valley Conservancy for a long time, and in the past has served as president and vice president respectfully. So I'm here tonight to talk about restoring the Heller Barn and reviving the Heller Homestead Park, including creating an open space master plan. On the table, you have this letterhead, Lori Ahmet. So we hired, or we're hopefully going to hire Lori. So the project team is a multidisciplinary team of preservation specialists, architects, engineers, and cost estimators to oversee this project. The lead consultant is Lori Ahmet, and she will be the project manager, and she's historic site planning and masonry conservation. Her expertise is 20 years of experience in historic site conservation. She led the phase 1 stabilization, emergency stabilization of the Heller Barn arch doorway back in 2010. She specializes in masonry repair, material salvage, and structural stabilization. Next, we have architectural planning, Jessica Ziegler, not sure how to say her last name, Chalar. She's village architecture and preservation. Her role is the master plan development and architectural design. She has 25 years of experience in preservation, architecture, adaptive reuse, and site planning. She leads the development of the site plan, phased barn restoration plan, and architectural renderings. Experience in historic, commercial, residential, and public space rehabilitation projects. Jonathan Price is from Green Cottage Industries, a structural engineer, structural assessment and barn ruin stabilization. He has 40-plus years as a structural designer and engineer with a focus on historic stone barns. Recent projects include the Upland Farm Barn restoration in Chester Springs, PA. He evaluates stability of the existing ruins and provides recommendations for structural integrity. Mike Funk will be the cost estimator from International Consultants. His role is budget and cost analysis for restoration and site improvements. He has over 30 years of construction cost estimation and adaptive reuse projects. Worked on major historic sites, including Eastern State Penitentiary, I can't say that now, Penitentiary. Say it, Penitentiary.
Penitentiary.
Good, you said it. In Philadelphia, I know of it. Provides cost projections for phase restoration and long-term site planning. So that's our team. And Lori, like I said, led the phase 1 stabilization of the Heller Barn, and the Saucon Valley Conservancy wanted to stay with her direction because she did a really good job on putting the project together. They developed a step-by-step process for the restoration efforts aligned with community goals and budget considerations. They have phase 1 is the initial assessment and planning. I won't read all of this. We have feedback meetings. Phase 2 is the master plan development. Phase 3 is the final report and public engagement. And then there's a schedule, and the cost breakdown comes in at a $40,910 plus reimbursable expenses of $1,200, covering everything that's listed here. Community and economic benefits. This preserves one of the last pre-revolutionary farmsteads in the region, which I think is very important. Creates historical interpretation programs for schools and visitors. Highlights Pennsylvania German barn architectural in a heritage site.
What page are you on? What paper are you on now?
This is my notes. I'm reading, I just made an outline of this.
Okay, sorry.
So, no, that's okay.
I was following along and all of a sudden it stopped, so I was confused.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, I was kind of going by headings. Okay. So I hope I didn't skip any. So 5 is the cultural and educational value. As I said, it's one of the last pre-revolutionary farmsteads in the region, creates historic interpretation programs for schools and visitors, which would align with the schoolhouse. And, Kathy's here from the schoolhouse. They offer 3rd grade programs, and this could be an educational program also. Public and recreational use, develop the barn ruins into a safe and accessible gathering space, enables yoga classes, craft fairs, music events, seasonal markets, connects with the walking trails, the picnic areas, scenic overlooks, very close to the rail trail. Attracts heritage tourism to Lower Saucon. I'm just gonna sidetrack for a second. Most of us have Bethlehem, Hellertown, different addresses, and most people don't realize there's a Lower Saucon Township. And, I think we need to highlight that and promote it for tourism. So it generates revenue for weddings, for the Conservancy, private events, festivals, and encourages partnerships. So on February 19th, we're going to be presenting this plan to Township Council for review. And our reason for making presentations to the various groups is to hopefully get a letter of support from your organization and to support this project, so that we have your behind us. That's that for that. Okay, I guess we can start the PowerPoint. So I have to admit, I'm not a pro at PowerPoints. In fact, when I presented this plan on the other week to, Laura's laughing, to the Parks and Rec Board, I had March 2025. And I'm like, tonight when I was going over this, I went, what? So I had to change it. So what's in front of you says March probably on it. But anyway, you have to forgive me. Anyway, I had to put it in two different parts because it was so big and so many pictures that I didn't know how to squish it down to make it like emailable. So I thought, well, I'll just cut it down. So I kind of did one for the park and one for the barn. So, but it's really one effort, you know. So, okay, so this is a slide, and for those of you, I got to figure out this pointer doesn't. Okay, well, the first is I don't know what happened to it, is the arch, and that was done in 2010. The Conservancy did that, and Lori, like I said, led the effort for that. And then for those not familiar, that's the Heller Homestead. The smaller building is the widow's house. The larger is the main house or the Heller house, depending on what you call it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so Lori has prepared this letter. And like I said, we just went over it. So go ahead. So as I said, we're hoping to get a letter of support. And at the council meeting on February 19th, we're going to ask for approval to approve the plan and authorize Brian Cucker of Hanover Engineering and Douglas Reed, who's a historic structure consultant, to provide advisory technical assistance as needed under the direction of interim manager Kathy Gorman. And again, I said this was requested by Laura and I. So go ahead. The Conservancy co-founded January 7th, 1993. I was a founding member. That's a whole nother story some other time when we're at the homestead and we're learning about history. But anyway, it's a non-for-profit. It's dedicated to work in partnership. It leases a 2.2 acre tract from the township. Go ahead. Again, the mission statements, go ahead. Objectives to restore the homestead property, go ahead. And we're here for the master plan, so go ahead. And then that's the outlined in red is the tax parcel. It's in two parcels. The 2.2 acres is the homestead, and the other 12-acre parcel is the whole thing's the park. But it goes from Friedensville to Skibo Road, which a lot of people don't realize. You can only access it from Friedensville, difficult on Skibo Road. Years ago, I did it, but I'm a little old now to do that. So anyway, so that's the parcel. It's right below Society Hill. Go ahead. If you can squint, you have the, I don't know if that's in the slide thing. That was in the National Register application, and it shows the different various buildings. Go ahead. And I wish I had this thing. Why can't it work? In front of the homestead, you'll see little little markings that show a railroad. If you go past the homestead of Skibo Road, there's a quarry in the back there. And there was a railroad there, and it actually went to the Thomas Iron place, so history. Okay, go ahead. And again, that's a Sanborn map. For those of you not familiar, years and years and years ago, an agency for insurance purposes, they went around and they drew the houses and structures on a map, Sanborn maps, and they identified hazardous materials and whatever. And if you look at that in the lower part of the slide, you'll see crosshatch. That was the wood frame barn that was there, and above it is the stone barn. And when I was familiar with the homestead in 1988, it was, all you could see was the foundations of the wood barn, but you can see all the different outbuildings. So go ahead. And again, that's the site. Go ahead. And I can't see sideways. So it's owned by the township, and it's 14 acres, and the building, the two-part building was built in 1751, and it was renovated in 1935 to the popular trends of the colonial revival movement. And you can see the fenced area is the herb garden, and in between the herb garden and the smaller building, you'll see the root cellar. Go ahead, please. It represents one of the few revolutionary colonial farmsteads in our region. And if anybody's good with cars, you can kind of date the picture by the car in front of the barn. So, about cars, so. Okay, next slide, please. Then after the Hellers lived there for a long time, Charles Stever was a descendant of the Heller family, and he built a sawmill, and they used to call the hill going up Friedensville Stever's Hill. This picture was taken in 1915, and it shows the Stever descendants on the wagon. And I was fortunate enough to meet one of the, I forget her name, was it Mary Stever? Anyway, I did meet her. She's now, of course, deceased, but go ahead. And the Geyer family lived there in 1934, and they're the ones that were responsible for the renovations. So go ahead. So there's fishing, there's a nature trail, which is on the table. A lot of people don't know there's a nature trail there. And again, it's a close proximity to the popular Saucon Rail Trail. Okay, next slide, please. Other resources on the property are a widow's house built in 1815. The root cellar was mid-19th century, and the ruins of a large stone and farm barn. And then, go ahead. All right, next. And that's, a lot of that stuff was taken out of the register book. Go ahead. And then the Conservancy decided that they would interpret the rooms to be whoever lived there during a certain period. That's how they furnished the rooms. So the 1950s kitchen, and then we have the old-fashioned living room with your big ashtrays, and that's how I remember that room. And then Sally Morris donated the English Lake District furniture for the Victorian living room. And if you look in the girl in the corner with the white dress on, you'll see kind of like a piece of furniture. That was the Heller cradle, came over from Germany with the Heller family, and that's there. And it was donated by, I knew I'd forget somebody's name. She was a Perma Boken who lived in Hellertown. She was a Heller descendant, and she donated that to us. So go ahead. When I say us, the Conservancy. And then the widow's house, again, period furnishings per different eras. Go ahead. The root cellar. Go ahead. The herb garden, go ahead. And then activities that the Conservancy did where they had art gallery exhibits, go ahead. Had young artist exhibit, go ahead. And reenactors would come and do History Day in April and November, and they did that. We did that for many years. It would always rain, but anyway. And then we have the map, which is on the table, which is an interpretive nature trail. And so that's pretty cool. Next one, please. So it would be nice to have a place for movies, for exercises, for dancing, for whatever, taking wedding pictures, private events, And it has the potential to provide 1,500 square feet of unique outdoor gathering space. And that's just the barn, inside of the barn. That doesn't count the other acres to the parcel. So go ahead. So that's my first part of the slide. So we'll go on to the next one. Actually, it was pretty fun putting it together. Finally got to know what I was doing. So this is the barn, and it was a beautiful English Lake District barn. Go ahead, Carol. And this slide was on the other one. Lori Allman, again, she's prepared the estimated probable cost letter. Go ahead. And again, I'm here, and I already said this, so go ahead. And again, the 2010 stabilization phase 1 for the arch. And if you notice on this picture, above the door frame, there's a little hole. Can you see that right there? Mm-hmm. Okay. When we were restoring that arch, some of us wanted to fill it in, some of us didn't. I said, the hole is specific. It was there for a reason. Leave it open. So we ended up leaving it open, and you'll see why. So go ahead. That was before the stabilization. You can see how the arch stone was separating, and actually the stone barn, there were 2 sections to the stone barn. This was the end section where the wagons got driven in, and eventually they didn't do that anymore. I don't know why, but they filled it in with stone and put a little door on it. So go ahead. Pennsylvania German Bank Barn. There was a book, Pennsylvania German Barns, by Charles Dornbush and John Heil. That was redone by our beloved Bob Ensminger. If anybody knows Bob Ensminger, he was just a phenomenal man. What's that?
He visited
Your barn.
And Ginger Petrie's barn when we were on the barn tour.
Petri dish, that's what he called Ginger.
He was unbelievably knowledgeable about barns.
Right. And he's referred to in the world of barns, the godfather of Pennsylvania barns. That's how, if you look up his name, you'll be very impressed. So go ahead. We were very fortunate to have him on our board. So one night I'm bored and I couldn't sleep, and I got up and got on the computer. This is early computer days, slow internet service. And I was bummed out about the Meadows Road Bridge, and somehow I must have typed in stone barn instead of stone bridge, because all of a sudden I'm in the Library of Congress, and I thought I was going to be arrested. I didn't know how I got in there. And it said stone barn, Hellertown. And I'm like, stone barn, Hellertown? How can that be? You know, I would never Google that. You know what I mean? I would Google Heller Barn. Well, you know, it wasn't, today's world isn't called the Heller Barn. So anyway, I found these beautiful pictures that were taken by, again, that Charles Dornbush, which is his name you saw on the other one. He was a photographer, and he was hired by the state to do the Historic American Building Survey. And he went around the state and did all these magnificent barns. Casilio's barn is in there. There's like four barns from Lower Saucon that's in there. I don't remember all of them right now, but go ahead. So I see these beautiful pictures of these of a barn, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I know that barn. But again, it was Stone Barn, Hellertown, and threw me off. Well, anyway, I can't get this bread thing to work. But anyway, the first picture is the English Lake District barn. And if you notice, there's a little roof over the bottom barn doors. Okay, well, in order to build that little piece of wood, it was in those little holes. It kind of went in those little holes. So that's why the hole's there. So anyway, adjacent to the stone barn is the wood frame barn. And so they took that photograph, and then the other one, you can see how much bigger the wood barn was, wooden frame barn compared to the stone barn, and the immense size of the beams in the barn. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And the Geyer family, like I said, lived there. And if you look at the third picture in the white little building there, that was the chicken coop. And that was their playhouse or their den or their boys' room, I don't know. And they called themselves the Apaches. And they actually wrote that on there. So if you look, it's Apache. So anyway, it's type E, Northampton County, west of Hellertown, about 1770, Library of Congress. So go ahead. And like I said, the pent roof is that roof that I talked about. Go ahead. Go ahead, Carol. And again, there's, I'm not going to read all that stuff. You can read it. Go ahead. So I was looking at an article, and on July 17th, 1890, that large frame barn that you saw in the photos was leveled to the ground by a tornado. We actually had a tornado in the area, and it leveled the barn. So those photos were taken in, I don't know, 1942, somewhere around there. So what happened between when it was leveled in 1890 to when it was in those pictures? Who rebuilt that wood barn? So I would love to know, ask some old timers here, what happened, who built that? When did it get built? But anyway, so the barn proudly stood for the 1941, and they call it a HAB study. So no one knows what happened to the large frame barn after that. The magnificent English Lake District barn weathered storm after storm until 1998. So anybody that has any information, please let me know. Okay, next slide. That's the article that it was in. Next. Next. And again, there's the other, this picture you saw before. Go ahead. And of course, you have beautiful pictures. I love the snow. I love to see barns in the snow. That was undated, and I don't know who took it, but wasn't that beautiful? Go ahead. And that showed the outbuildings. That wasn't the spring house. I think that was just, I forget what it was, outbuilding. Go ahead. Then, when I got on council in 1988, there was a hole the size of a baseball in the roof of that barn. And year after year, it just collapsed more and more and more till it was half of a roof gone. So that picture was taken in 1993. So go ahead. And these are, again, in that same time period that we saw half the roof gone. Go ahead. And again, you can see the little hole much better, and you can see all the little holes going across. Next slide. And you could see, if you look, there's a diagonal crack going down the barn, and it was visible. And most people think that because of that crack didn't help it collapsing. Also, rumor had it that, and I'm not sure, the main beam that went across in the top of the roof, somebody had cut it to do something to it and was using it as a pulley or something, I don't know. And that was too much for the barn. So go ahead, next slide. Next slide. Then one day I was in a meeting and we had beepers and the manager's beeper thing went off, and I'm like, he goes, so he came and he said, Priscilla, I need to see you after the meeting. I said, okay. He says, well, hate to tell you, I have some bad news here. The Heller barn collapsed. And it was February 26, 1998. And it had rained for like 5 days in a row. And it just rained and rained and rained. And the barn couldn't take it anymore. And it just collapsed. And it pushed out the front. And I called it the cave. So anyway, so the township deemed it a danger and brought down all about 1/3 of the barn and left the stone arch. And now it just stands proudly. So go ahead. And you can see how, it just kind of pushed forward that weak section in the front. Go ahead. Go ahead. So most of the barn was still up. I don't know where the danger was, but that was not my call. Go ahead. And that's from the the side looking, where there were windows actually there. Go ahead. And I just thought I threw the horse in there for fun. Go ahead. So, over the years, the Conservancy held many barn tours, and money raised was earmarked for the preservation, and that helped paid for the phase one, stage one, phase one, the arch stabilization. Go ahead. And again, just some more nice pictures of the barn with a little outbuilding. Go ahead. Now, so there's a dream here. If you can do this someplace else, you can do it here. We don't know how much stone is there. We don't know how far we're gonna get. We don't know the structure, how strong it is to build on it. We don't know any of that. That's why we have to hire this person to come in there and do this. So this is Lock Ridge Furnace out in Emmaus or Punji or somewhere out there. I've never been there. I've seen pictures of it, and I just think it's a beauty. It looks so beautiful, and I love the snow. So go ahead. And there's other pictures, and I got these off their website. So there is hope. I mean, they've done this other places with ruins. So next slide, please. And this was one of the first things that I found on the old internet when I looked up ruins. This was at Washington Lee University, and this building had burned, and they saved it, and they decided to save it as much as they can because it meant something to them and their community, and they needed to save it. And then next slide, please. It is now on the National Register, so it gives me the goosebumps when I think about that. So go ahead. And now we're back to the arch. And go ahead. And if you read, I don't know, do you have Terry Clemens' letter? Yeah, they're there, okay. And so he was asked about the open space money, and we can use open space money for, let's see, to develop, improve, design, engineer, and maintain property acquired for open space benefit or benefits. So there's his letter. Go ahead. And so tonight we're here to request a letter of support and recommendations to council for the 19th. And again, it's to direct Lori to develop the plan and authorize Brian and Doug under Kathy's direction. And next slide, please. And that's my presentation, and I'll be here for questions. And if you're not a member, please join not only our organization, but the Lower Saucon Township Historical and the Hellertown Gristmill, because they all need to be helped. So thank you for your time. So anybody have any questions? Yes.
So I didn't see, unless I missed it, do we have an estimated cost?
Yeah, didn't I? Yes, $40,000. It's in the thing.
That's the engineering.
Yeah.
Right here.
No, I don't have it.
And that's to create the master plan and the outline for the stages of the barn stable, rebuilding it. So, but doesn't include costs to rebuild it. It's just the plans and engineering and all that stuff. So that's where we're at now.
And then, once they do this, then they'll give you a cost of what they think it's gonna cost to rebuild it? Like, once they do the planning and the site surveying?
The estimator is going to be doing that. What is this? The estimator is supposed to phase it out for us to do fundraising. So.
Right, so the plan right now is to evaluate what assessing the options are moving forward to revitalize this, rebuild it, et cetera. And then the plan would be to try to generate a capital fundraising campaign
Right.
to raise the funds.
Right,
Okay.
but not for the engineering work. That'll come out of open space funds.
Right.
But to rebuild it, to pay a contractor to come in, then that has to be fundraised.
So just to be clear to the committee here, You know, I trust everyone read the materials in preparation for this meeting. So there was a letter here, and now I'm getting them all. Yes, from, they're the same one here, right? From Clemens, Richter, and Rice, and the attorney, Terry Clemens, interpreted the language of the open space plan to point out that annually up to 25% of any accumulated balance of the fund could be used as Priscilla pointed out in the presentation, in particular, to develop, improve, design, engineer, and maintain property acquired for open space benefit or benefits. So apparently that is an acceptable use of open space funds. Cheyenne has a question.
I do have a question. When I was reading this, where it said on the 2016 levy, you can only use 10%.
Wait, I'm having.
On the 2016 levy that was imposed, you can only use 10%.
There were
So
3 years.
There were 3 levies,
There were
correct?
three, right, and one of them is only 10%, and one of them, is 25%.
What's the time, so the first 2 are the 25, the 2016 was the one that was 10%. What time,
There's
like how many
$12
years
million
is that?
in there, I'm not gonna figure it out, I don't know.
Well, no, I guess what I'm asking is, so the first resolution or first ordinance was done in 2006, right? That was good for 5 years, and then there was 2011, that was 5 years. And then there was 2016 for 5 years,
Right.
correct?
And it's all in the same pot.
Right, so that means though you can only use the 25% for those first, basically 10 years. And then 10% for that third term, basically, if you want to look at it as terms to break it up, correct?
When you say 10 years, what do you mean by 10 years?
There's basically 3 5-year
Right,
time
5-year
periods.
terms, right?
So the first 2, you can use the 25%, but isn't the levy, didn't it say 10% of the funds raised from the 2016 levy can be used for that stuff?
Yeah.
Right,
So
but,
don't you have to factor it then, it's not 25% of all 3 of those, basically all 3 15 years. It would be 25% of the first 10 years and then
Right.
10% of that third term
Right.
from
Right.
2016 to 2021, correct?
right.
I
but
just want to make sure I'm understanding this.
No, you're right, but I didn't figure it out, so I don't know what the numbers are. Do you know what I'm saying? But I know there's enough in there to do this. Do you know what I'm saying? No matter which.
See what the numbers are per interval.
Right, right.
Say what's 10%
That's what I'm asking.
Right,
of
right.
10 years and what's
nobody's figured it out.
25% of the other.
Well, it's
Yeah.
$12 million, so it's,
But did it come in evenly over all 10?
Kathy
mean,
can figure that
taxes,
out. I'm sure Kathy
I
can
don't
figure.
know when the tax increases were, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm, like, the taxes, I'm sure, were not the same from 2016 or 2006 to 2021, correct?
I'm having trouble hearing you with the noise,
I don't have a microphone. So what I was asking is, the taxes weren't the same from 2006 to 2021.
the taxes were 1.25 every year, but the legislature said that we could only spend 10% that one year and 25% those other 2 years. The state legislature.
So it's just that 1 year is the 10%?
Just the year, not the whole 5 years in between.
It's not it's not what was imposed with that ordinance that was passed in 2016?
Our ordinance that we the referendum language that we used
Yeah.
is not what they based this on, because the state changed it and allowed, back then you couldn't do a maintenance. You couldn't use it for maintenance. Could not use a penny of it for maintenance. And then over the years, the state legislature changed it, and they said that now you can do these, whatever that letter
That's
is.
session 2021, though. So that would be.
When you
that's-
say 2020,
Well, it says that he read the legislator, the House Bill 1523 of session 2021. So that would mean that that doesn't actually take effect until that point. So you would still have the 10% from 2016 to 2021, correct?
Well, the $40,000 cost is gonna be way under what we collected.
Well, I think it's important to have this conversation because you don't want to throw 40,000 if it's not going to be lucrative on the back end.
Lucrative on the back end.
Like if all the cost, if it doesn't make sense, why spend 40,000?
what doesn't make sense?
So what I'm, Cheyenne, what I'm hearing is effectively the idea being a $40,000 expenditure for a plan that what it's going to estimate for actual complete restaurant renovation is going to fall far beyond what's possible to do with available funds. Is that,
Well, the rest of the
No.
project isn't meant to come out of open space.
Yeah, it's they're gonna do capital.
It's,
Yeah.
well, it's,
Yeah,
but it's in
capital
total. I
fund,
mean, if,
which is not with the
how much,
township.
what year was that arch done?
The arch was done in 2010.
What was the expense for the arch,
I don't
the actual
remember.
construction?
I have to go back to the Conservancy records.
Okay, can you make that a part of your presentation with council?
Sure.
You know, what all the engineering was and then what the actual expense was to erect it?
I wouldn't have access to that information. How would we have access to that? Was, what, 15 years ago? I don't even,
Old treasury reports,
huh?
old treasury reports.
I just think it would serve as a good outline to say, hey, you know, how many years ago now? 14 years ago now, it cost this much to do just that one section. You know, and now you add inflation to that and the whole scope of a project.
Right.
You know, is where I'm like, I think it's a big spend, and I think before anybody makes a recommendation to say, yeah, spend this money, it's like, you can get some preliminary data that's not gonna cost $40,000, that's where I'm going with my questions. And I wanna make sure that I'm interpreting this
Well,
correctly.
you also have to understand that this is also to develop the open space park plan. It's not just for the barn.
Could I ask that we could get a clear number for what could be used for these projects from this?
I mean-
Oh, my God.
So, no, I think what should be possible to calculate is records have been kept, undoubtedly records were kept on the open space plan and how much accrued year by year through the tax levies. So it seems to me that it should be a relatively simple matter to, if we parse this out from the different dates of 2006, 2011, 2016, there should be records that indicate how much money was raised year by year in the open space fund. And then it's simple math to determine what 10%
Well, that's what I
of
was
those
asking.
intervals are and what 25% of the subsequent intervals are. That's something that we really need as an open space committee to manage this fund, to make recommendations of this sort for maintenance and development and so forth, because it's not 25% of 12 million, right? It's gonna be 10% of some
Whatever
fraction of that,
third.
and it's gonna be 25% of another fraction of that. But it strikes me as a rather simple calculation for the person who knows how much was raised on a year-by-year basis. Those records have to have been kept.
I know, but can I interject? When you read this, that HB 1523 in 2021 basically says 25% of the accumulated balance. It doesn't break it down for 2006, 2011, and 2016. It's 25% now that the funds can be levied, authorized in the development, the improvement, design, engineering, and maintenance of properties acquired in open space. So I think what you're saying was true at the time, but when
Well,
this,
that's what I was asking,
when-
does that supersede what the original levy?
That's how
was
I'm
written.
reading this, that the attorney's coming back saying that the HB 1523 session 2021 now allows 25%.
That last paragraph on the second page certainly does seem to summarize it in that way. It says, based on the above, it is my opinion that the act permits up to 25% of the funds raised through the open space levy to be used for any of the purposes stated under 4I above.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah, but read
summary
the-
statement
Read the last
suggests that,
sentence where it says, however, only 10% of the funds from the 2016 levy can be used for such purposes.
yeah, that's a caveat, isn't it?
Right, so we have one bucket at 1% and another bucket at the higher
Right.
percentage.
When I'm a little confused, because I'm like reading this, it's like the improvement of the open space, I mean, the parcel's already in open space.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily a gain for the township per se towards open space. It's a gain for the conservancy as a moneymaker. And it's fine, it's nothing knocking the conservancy, but
Agree with that.
I personally would rather see it used for other parcels that are not in open space. I think more aligns with what the mission statement of the open space program originally was. I mean, you're taking that project, even 40,000,
But
you know,
even
you apply that
the
to a
open
parcel.
space referendum stated that a percentage then, in subsequent years, that a percentage could be used for maintaining, developing, and engineering the properties accumulated through the open space program.
No,
So,
I read that, I'm just saying,
so
I think,
it's just a, you know, on the one hand, I think one thing we have to do, regardless of this request, in light of this memo, is to ask someone in the township who has access to the records of the amount of money raised over these various time periods to parse out how much of the funds raised under 10%, what is that sum? And then what is the 25% of the other funds? And then we would know in each case how much of that 12 million can be used for the stated purpose here. I'm not gonna keep saying improve design and engineer over and over, but these stated, in essence, maintenance program versus what can be used for acquisition of open space. So, and then from what I gather, there have been decisions, I would ask Laura Ray and Priscilla to, if from your knowledge on council, I understand that funds from open space have been used for these purposes on other properties. Is that true or is
I
it
don't
not?
think so, just to purchase.
I think some maintenance.
Some
costs have
maintenance
been,
for the
yeah.
parks, yeah,
Right,
but not a
so-
lot.
Right, so
So I don't
some of
know
these funds are already
keep
being
track of
used
that.
by the township, and they are allowable. I mean, you know, the legal interpretation indicates that they are. So going forward, I think what I think we should do is entertain a motion to request that the appropriate people at the township offices work through the numbers and provide a summary of what open space funds were raised during each of these stated time periods and calculate the 10% and the 25% of the appropriate time period. So then, moving forward, open space would know how much of the monies in total, what percentage of the total funds can be used only for open space acquisition, and what are the funds available for maintenance and development, et cetera. Then we're not guesstimating, we're going to know. But frankly, if you take 25% of even the more recent funds, clearly 25% of 12 million is gonna be a much larger number than $40,000.
Sure.
So I hear you, but at the end of the day, I think you're creating a lot of work that's not really necessary. You know what's in open space. You know what's being requested. You also know that the repairs are not gonna be covered by open space.
Right.
You also know that this property is the backbone of our whole community. So to me, I don't know why you wouldn't approve this, because it's legal and it's allowable, and it's probably 0.05% or lower of what we're gonna use in open space, and it's our namesake. I mean, I just, the money, the work is gonna come in renovating this thing. That's where the time and the money is, and that's not our concern.
Right.
I'm not arguing against whether we should recommend whether funds be taken from open space for this request at this moment by pointing out that I think they're two separate issues.
There are two separate issues.
One is we need to get a clear understanding, literally to the dollar, of what portion of open space can only be used for open space acquisition. And then that's gonna be a running tally from year to year, right?
Correct.
But I think, however, whoever is managing that money, the money sitting in the township coffers, as it were,
Correct.
the money is being utilized and decisions are being made, but at the moment, they're not being made with a clear understanding of what the exact number of dollars are available for each of those two categories of
Correct.
use.
Correct.
So I think before the night's over, we should talk about that as one thing, and perhaps make a simple motion to have township do those calculations. I think, frankly, not to sound arrogant, but if you give me those numbers, I could tell you in 15 minutes what they're gonna be.
Carol.
So it's not a lot of work for someone to do that. That's one issue. I think
you
it's
sort of already did make a motion if we wanna finish it.
I'm sorry.
I think you already did make the motion to get a summary of the dollar amounts.
Yeah,
That fall
and
under
that
the
takes care of one
10%.
issue at the moment that we need to do anyway, I think. So, okay,
Well, I second.
I'll move that we have the township calculate what percentage of the open space funds can be used for maintenance and development, et cetera, versus what can only be used for open space, taking into consideration and parsing out which amount of the money raised during the era governed by the 10% limit and what percentage governed by the 25% limit. So we would actually have actual dollars for decision-making going forward.
I'll second that.
I seconded already.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I just want to remind us then, if we call a vote here, that I request we raise our hands again, just so Carol can get a count of the vote, because she has to report who voted how, simply what the vote was, okay? Is there any further discussion of that motion before we vote on that motion? Discussion? Because I view it as a separate, there's no contingency
there
in
is a
that
separate
motion to say
Yeah, there's
that we do not take action on the request before us otherwise. Okay, so those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, so it's unanimous. Okay, now we can address the issue of the request, a recommendation to council to request that the $40,000 and more precisely, whatever the actual dollar request is for $40,910. So that's what we're considering.
Can I? First off, I appreciate your presentation. I was gonna ask, what happened to the barn? And you
The
told me.
wood barn?
So I appreciate that. No, just
Oh,
in general.
yes,
You know, I'm not
right. It's
from
still-
I grew up in Allentown. I moved here in 2013. So I'm not intimately associated with Lower Saucon Township's history that way.
Rookie, he's a rookie.
Right, the noob.
There's still a knife in my heart because of that barn coming down, but that's a whole nother story.
What?
There's a knife in my heart about
Because of what?
the stone barn.
Moving here from
Oh.
Allentown.
Because I went from Allentown? Yeah.
No.
I thought that really offended you. Go Canaries. But, so, I appreciate that, because I didn't know that history. So how does a wooden barn disappear, right?
Well,
Without
That went
anybody
down
knowing?
before.
1890, a tornado.
Right, I
Okay,
understood
then
that.
it had to get rebuilt because Stever was a sawmill. He had a sawmill there. So probably built the wood barn. It would make sense, a sawmill person would do that. But then in 1941, when those pictures were taken in Library of Congress, the barn was there again. So how did it come back? And, so he must have rebuilt it, but then what happened to it after that? I mean, I became familiar with the barn in 1988, and it wasn't there then.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
So I guess, who was the owner or caretaker of the property when it collapsed?
The township?
That township, not this conservancy at the time?
What's that?
Was it the
No.
conservancy or it was the township?
The township has always owned it. When Hovnanian, little side history here, Society Hill, when Society Hill, you know how people come before you and ask for donations for when it's their developments, right? Well, when Society Hill was built, they had to dedicate open space to the township, and we wanted land, not money. So they had to give us 14 acres of open space land. They gave us the 14 acres from the creek, okay? I was brand new on council, so I'm reading everything I can get my hands on, and I read the open space ordinance, and it said it had to be prime developable land. And I said, excuse me, that is floodplain land. Why are you giving it to us? And they said, oh, duh. And we got Southeastern Park, 14 acres of land. So they gave us buildable land, and we got a park out of it. Plus, we got the Heller Homestead. They didn't take that away. So that's how we got that.
It's definitely tragic watching it fall apart and not being maintained through that time and fall into such disrepair. And now we have to come back and clean up the pieces. But I'm very supportive of this whole idea. You look at what they've done with the steel stacks. You mentioned Lockridge Park. I have pictures in my house of my family from there. You mentioned Eastern State. If you've ever get down there for a Halloween event that they do,
Awesome.
it's scary. It's fun. So something similar in that vein that people can gather to for photos or events, anything like that, makes a lot of sense and helps bring our community together. How much of this is already developed as far as the nature trail? Any of this?
The whole thing's there.
Oh, this is there.
But
Like,
it
I've never
need-
been to the
And
facility,
let
you know what I
me-
mean? So,
If I can add, we're meeting out there on Thursday to walk the property, but I went out there last weekend because I didn't know it was next Monday. Sorry. It's beautiful. It overlooks, it's very small. It's not like, you know,
Yeah.
what you can walk, but there's some picnic tables, some benches. It overlooks the creek. It's pretty high. It's a very nice passive park. And so, the Saucon Creek Watershed's trying to see what we can do to help in restoring the riparian buffer. But I was amazed.
It's a hidden jewel.
Huh?
It's like a hidden jewel.
It's a hidden jewel. We have a lot of them in
so
Lower Saucon, that's
we
one
have
of
this
them.
money set aside for open space, right?
We have
And
what?
open space funding that's set aside, which, you
The
know.
$12 million, right.
Supporting this to acquire properties as we are all working on, to preserve and protect in our township. That's great. At some point, we've talked about this, we're gonna run out of properties to purchase, right?
There's still a lot.
There's still a lot, but that's not to say that we shouldn't invest further into the ones that we already have to add value to them. So in that situation, I feel that this is something that we should be behind, for the environmental benefits behind it, and the community aspect, and the history of our township and Hellertown as well.
So for some perspective, I just did some quick math. I took 12 million, there's 19 years worth of open space funding. So if you take 12 million, divide by 19, there were about 10 years under each category, 10%, 25%. So I took the annual 600,000, whatever, times 10, and what you end up with when you take just 25% of 10 years of that time, there's $1,578,947,000. So basically 1.6 million available in the open space fund for maintenance at the 25% rate. Obviously then the other 10 years would pull down, basically I would have to go back a number, but again, it's gonna be it's gonna be at least $500,000 added to this. So you'd be up to $2 million available for maintenance, development, et cetera. So and then, you know, I'll just do this. Well, you know, we could take the 40,000 and see what percentage it is of this 1.5 million. Let's see, I'm gonna do 1.6.
Well, while he's doing that, real quick, my only commentary back on the whole idea is the parking.
I know, that's a down.
And the Water Street Bridge, if there's any widening project there in the future, that would be considered.
They just repaired that bridge.
They just redid that
They're
bridge.
not gonna redo it.
But
That's,
I'm always just thinking.
You're right, and you're right, because they made it now standard, you know, for the trucks and stuff like that, so they really widen it, but you never know what's gonna happen in 20 years.
Never know.
sure.
Fortunately, we have a good relationship with Hellertown, and when we have, the Conservancy has events, they let us use their park to
At
park.
Water Street for parking.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So the other thing is, which is the township does or can, and they may have done it over the years, they can use that for like maintenance issues. So if there's a new roof, like, you know, at either the schoolhouse or the homestead or whatever, they could use that money. But I also want to say that when the phase 1 stabilization for the arch was done, the township didn't pay 1 penny towards that. That was all money raised by barn tours and Conservancy people donating to the Conservancy. And that was all paid for by the Conservancy, not the township. Had nothing to do with open space, so.
So you have the DCNR grants here, I saw it. Is that here
It's
for?
just a line item.
No, There's a whole,
Yeah, it wasn't specifically for this,
it was not?
Mm-mm.
Okay, but that's available,
just
correct?
an FYI.
But that's why
I was excited about this park plan because of having the stream frontage, that we could, that's why I involved the watershed folks, so that it would be.
I understand. My question is, I finally found my agenda. Here it is. Do we know the 2025 dates for the grants, for the DCNR grants?
I think it said it has to be in by
This March,
end of March.
it's really quick. That's why we're meeting.
Closes in April.
Yeah. They had it.
General, when are applications accepted? In the middle of the white part, left.
So another way of thinking about this, at the moment, the issue at hand is a request for the EAC to consider recommending that the $40,000, almost $41,000, to do this assessment come from the Open Space Maintenance Fund, if we call it that. And we know that just within the period of years that 25% was allowable for this sort of use, the $41,000 comes out to 2.5% of it. So it is a very small amount as a percentage. And that's just out of what's available for maintenance. It's not touching the portion that's the 75%, as it were, that's only used for acquisition. And to put this all into perspective, looking down the road, ultimately the plan is to raise money through capital fundraising campaigns, grant writing, probably a variety of different sources. However, you can't write any of those proposals or have fundraisers effectively when you don't know how much money you're trying to raise to accomplish the overall goal.
Or even if
So
the foundation will take.
this is sort of seed money, a prerequisite to determine how much money would be necessary to renovate this barn and rebuild this barn in essence. And if you don't know how much you need, you can't ask anybody for a blank check. So I think the question is, do we think it's prudent to use 2.5% of not even the total that's available for this sort of use, but 2.5% of what accrued over a 10-year period when 25% was allowed? There's still 10 more years of open space money where 10% is available. So I think that's the question before us. Do we think that's a prudent use of a relatively small percentage of the funds available?
And it is open space now, so it was just.
Yeah, it is open space.
I have a question. So I guess I'm getting hung up because I feel like there's a lot of preliminary stuff that could be done without spending $40,000. So like the Lutz Franklin Schoolhouse is a good example of a similar project where they actually moved it. Does anybody know what didn't they move the Lutz Franklin?
No.
They rebuilt it, whatever they did there, they threw a
Well, they
bunch of
put
money
in-
in.
They put a new, they had to
They
put,
redid the whole thing, didn't they?
not the whole thing,
What
no.
did they do with the schoolhouse?
They did, what's it called, masonry,
Repointed it.
repointed
Yeah,
it,
almost the
and
whole
then
thing,
put a
didn't they?
roof.
So like you can look at it and say, how much money was spent there, and that's a fraction of the size of this barn. So like my concern is, especially when you start getting into the historical and you want it to be built time period correct, which, everybody I think does, what happens if they come out and they say it's gonna be $10 million? Which, I mean, could very well be the case because it's a huge undertaking.
Is the intent to reconstruct the barn
Well, hold on a
as
second.
is?
That's my
I
other.
think that's a good
Why we're doing a
question, because-
phased approach, so we build the phases as we get the money. And it could look like a ruins, like that place, or it could be built off, sided and roofed. It depends on how much, phased over the time.
But before asking for money, why didn't anybody, I mean, I'm sure you can find out what it costs to do Lockridge, or like Washington and Lee, like they didn't rebuild that structure to what the structure was. So I guess I would like to just see some, I mean, you can get free data to say, okay, before we spend $40,000, we can say, okay, these projects are similar, and then you have a basis to go off of, before you just spend $40,000 for And yeah, it's a small fraction, but over time, small fractions add up to big
I
fractions.
know, but it's like needing your roof done. You can go to your neighbor and say, how much did your roof cost? And they say, oh, $5,000. Would you happen to have a higher pitch, multiple levels?
Well,
And
you
the,
can do
and
this,
the
I wouldn't build with
contractor
somebody that
comes
has a
back
different
and
house.
says it's $10,000. I think, I think that if,
There are things that are very comparable.
But
I mean,
let me
what's
add-
Franklin Schoolhouse? I wouldn't
add,
compare a
Cheyenne.
roof on my house to a roof like yours, but I might ask somebody that has a similar size home for sure.
so one of the things, this
Basic
is,
economics.
this has been on our agenda for at least 6 years that I've been coming to council. The barn, the ruins, it's been a discussion. This is not new. It
No, but we're
came up.
discussing it, so it's,
No,
so
it
it's on the
was-
agenda and I shouldn't ask questions. is
No,
what
no,
you're-
no, I'm not saying that. I'm
confused.
saying this is a project that's been going on and they have talked about it for several years. So I don't think anyone's approaching it without doing the research.
Well, but, I mean, asking a simple question of, what did it cost for the arch? That should be, I mean, I'm sorry, and it's not knocking anybody, but I think that should be a simple thing that would have been done as part of the due diligence.
That was capital funds that the conservatory did.
It doesn't matter whose expense it was, it's what the expense was. Because you can look at it and say, okay, that's a very small fraction of what that building is actually gonna be. And if you say, okay, that was $1 million, I'm just pulling a number out, not saying it was. That was $1 million, well, now you can exponentially grow that to what the whole project is gonna be. So all I'm trying to do is save it from, and I don't care if it's 2.5%, save a 2.5% from being spent when you look at the project as a whole, and it's not gonna be viable. That's what I'm getting at, and that's where I think you can get basic, simple things, and it's free information. I'm sure you can find what it costs to do Lock Ridge, or that Washington and Lee project, or Litz Franklin Schoolhouse. And those are, smaller, because they didn't rebuild the entire structure. And that's also a concern, when you look at it and you're like, okay, is it Emmaus where Lock Ridge is? Yeah. Emmaus didn't rebuild what those buildings were. Washington and Lee didn't rebuild what those buildings are, but Lower Saucon Township should. And it's a big structure.
Are you saying that it should be built to the original barn? I don't.
No, what I'm saying.
She's implying that Priscilla is implying that it should be built back to the way it was.
Oh, I didn't
Can I see
take
that
that.
one more time?
I thought isn't that what the goal is, to get it to a point that it could be?
That is the ultimate goal, but it may not happen based on funding, but that's the goal, is to put a roof over it and build it back up. So it's a semi-indoor facility.
It doesn't have to be 40 feet high like it was originally.
Well, but if you're getting historical architects in, they're gonna build it to what it was. They're not gonna say, historically, historically barns weren't, 20 feet high. So that's where I'm getting a little concerned. Like I said, I'm just trying to be prudent about this before money is spent. And I don't care if it's 2%. 2% is still 2%.
Well, in support of prudence and to split the baby, is there a necessity to move forward with this plan, with the final master plan component that's nearly $12,000 and $40,000, as opposed to moving forward with $28,000 for the preliminary stage draft and estimates, which then we could potentially approve the final $12,000 if the final plan seems possible? Because to Cheyenne's point, it comes back with a $10 million estimate. You say, well, we would get nowhere near that stage. Is it a $12,000 master plan if you say, actually the first two stages where it's a courtyard, it's protected walls, is a more approachable goal, maybe $1 million project? Is the final master plan for only going that far going to be $12,000, or is that a more modest design for a final plan?
I don't know how to answer that. All I know is that by waiting another winter is going to be more expensive, because the more water that gets inside the stone walls, it's pushing it out, and it's going to cost more money, and we're going to lose a lot of the ruins.
Well, you don't have to wait a whole winter. You can get that other data relatively quickly. I don't feel it's something it has to be made a decision this evening.
So the goal is to go before council next Wednesday and then move forward.
So it's an all or nothing?
Well, yeah, because we're wasting
Well, you wasted how many years? When did they got knocked down? When Valley knocked the whole thing down? You were on council then. So at that point is when somebody should have stepped up and said, hey, we want to preserve this, instead of allowing Valley.
You can read the minutes.
I'm not
You can
knocking
read the
you. I'm just
minutes.
saying that's
Well, no,
when the
I
fight
think
should have
you
been had to say, hey, let's
can't go
preserve what we
back.
have.
You can't go
Yeah.
back.
So what it comes out to be then I went through in this time, and again, these are estimates. This isn't I don't even know, I'm using open space 12 million. I don't know if it's 12,800,000 or what, but just with rough estimates, this looks like about 1.8% of what's available for maintenance, improvement, engineering, and so forth. So that's what we're looking at for the moment is, do we think it's wise to recommend to council to use roughly $41,000 of the open space maintenance funds to develop a master plan that would then make it possible to start pursuing grants and develop a capital fundraising campaign through other mechanisms to try to raise the funds necessary to restore that barn or rebuild that barn. That's basically what we're looking at.
Is this just an assessment, or is this going to be the full architectural drawings for 40K?
My understanding is if this is approved and she gets to work on her project and it's the final end result, we're gonna have like a poster to start fundraising, and this is gonna be what renderings and, you know, is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's right here, if you read this, it talks about
Yeah, well, I'm just asking.
graphics,
I'm not
final
sure if I can read all
plan,
of this right now, but
proposal, the magnitude, estimated
Where?
cost.
what page are you on which, is it this one? LRMI?
It's in that Lori
Yeah.
letter.
Yeah, I don't know.
Conceptual planning.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Are we gonna get a rendered model of what it's gonna look like for
On paper, I don't know about a
$40,000?
model. I would love to have one of those, like, you know,
Little
Like a
miniatures,
diorama?
just diorama. Well, can we get that for
I
$40,000?
don't
Because
know.
then I'm in.
Some open space
you-
money.
Well, that's another
Bring
question,
our
like,
dolls
we don't even
together
know
and
we're
play.
getting, you don't know what you're getting for $41,000. It should be clear, concise, you know, like, all right, so they're gonna do that $40,000, and then if it gets approved and passed, then you can put shovels in the ground.
Go
Like,
ahead.
at this point, you don't know, I think that's a problem.
Hold on 1 second. Harry would like to
Harry
say
has a
something.
question.
I think her proposal was very thorough, my opinion, whatever
I'm
that's
just-
worth.
I'm asking for clarity.
Okay, Harry,
Well, my clarity is this is very, very
Let's
clear.
give Harry the opportunity to speak.
Sure, I'm a little, I'm a little sick, so pardon me with my voice a little bit. But to the extent of what she's saying, I mean, what would really be the harm of just like seeing like what those things did cost? I mean, aside from like the time it would take to get those things, like what would actually be the harm of getting that stuff? Because I mean, it would seem smart. I mean, if $40,000, I mean, no matter how insignificant of a fraction, I mean, it is a large sum of money. And I mean, if time is the only issue, I mean, it seems like something that could just be like Googled. I mean, some of this stuff.
It's more complicated than you think, but yes.
But I mean, is time the only issue with that? Like finding this stuff?
Time is of the essence, because we want to move on with this project. It's been a long time in
Well, yeah, but you can delay
the.
it one month, wouldn't hurt anything.
You asked my opinion, and that's my opinion.
I didn't ask your opinion.
Well,
All I
I'm
said is
answering.
You could delay it 1 month to get some preliminary data.
Like,
There are some examples in here that the estimator did.
$40,000, why don't we give
Projects.
staff a raise, because we have extra money there, but we don't wanna
did
spend that
already.
money. No,
The issue.
appropriate.
Stick to the
But
topic.
it's the same thing, if you're, you know,
It's
it's
not
just
the same
40,000, well
thing.
then spend it across the board on other things.
Stop.
I mean, it's kind of outrageous, I think.
It's not outrageous. $40,000 for this level try and get
But then show up with some basic information.
you have it. You have everything that she
No,
wants.
I would like to see what the arch costs. There's a perfect example. You restored a
Arch
part
was
of
built
it.
in 2010. Tell me one thing that costs the same now that costs the same
You
in
can
2010.
factor, just the way he factored what the taxes are, you can factor inflation. Google what? Somebody should be able to say, when we restored the arch,
Why
this
would
is how
I-
much it was.
Keep in mind that we as a body can't make any of these decisions. This is just a recommendation to council to deliberate on the actual decision to spend the funds or not. And so we were just simply asked to write a letter of support or to support that these funds be utilized. And I think, again, important thing is, at the moment, council and the township are making decisions on spending open space funds without our knowledge, actually.
was being
And
courteous
they're
coming
making
here.
decisions, and presumably they are able to make these decisions when they're utilizing these funds in ways that are allowable. So clearly, the legal recommendation or the legal interpretation by Terry Clemens is that there are funds that are available to be used for this. It's Township Council who makes those decisions, not us. So I'm going to make a motion that we recommend to Township Council that they determine whether they think it's appropriate to spend $41,000 approximately for this evaluation.
No.
No?
No.
You wanna clarify?
The cost, this cost is a drop in the bucket. For what she's gonna do and what costs are today for an engineer, this is a drop in the bucket. So the task tonight is for us to either approve, to support them, or not support them. Not kick it back to them.
No, I'm suggesting that council, I mean, the motion I'm trying to make is to support council utilizing this fund
Thank you. I
for that purpose. So
misunderstood
no, I'm not kicking anything back.
You started with
There
the
is an
council
artistic
is spending
perspective
some of the open space money without
Yes.
our knowledge. So
No, I'm just pointing out that,
say, well, let's let council decide what they want to do with it.
no,
I got it.
council is going to decide what they want to do with this
I'm
because
in.
that's their purview. I'm suggesting a motion to recommend that, for us to recommend that they use for approximately $41,000 of open space money as it's allocated or as is allowed to complete this study.
I second.
And I would just like to say that the township has dedicated itself to open space, historical preservation, and we have a historical society that the township does support. So what we're doing is maintaining an incredible piece of our history in Hellertown with the Pennsylvania barn and what's been done. And I agree with what's been discussed tonight in support of it.
Yeah, and I see that we will receive one artistic perspective rendering of chosen barn restoration option.
Just one?
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, maybe they'll
That's
throw
why
in two
Staples
and
is around the
really
corner,
nice.
right?
If we can get a little cardboard model though, for
I'll
like
ask.
a couple $100, I'm in.
Further discussion on the motion. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so we have, what was it? I don't know, I didn't count, but you have the count. 5-1, okay.
Maybe
So-
Saucon Valley School District can do one of those little models.
There you go.
Actually, good competition.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks for your presentation, Priscilla.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, so we also are aware, this is sort of under new business, the memo for the DCNR grant opening, so I wasn't at the last meeting, but I did read the summary that Kathy presented, so I think with some of the projects that were discussed at that meeting, there are some opportunities for us to think about whether we want to pursue any grants, but also the Township Council itself can consider some
That's what I was gonna ask.
opportunities.
Priscilla, before you leave, if we would take, let me be clear, I would take on a grant, right, for something like this. Would you be able to get support from Saucon Valley Conservancy and the Historic Committee, like not just one person writing this grant? And then the council, does anybody on council,
Right,
right?
have to, because they're the owners, I would think they'd have to write off on the grant, because they're the owners of the property.
Lower Saucon Township.
Right.
But what about the council?
Whole council is the township. The township is the county.
Well, yeah.
So the
My
township-
question though is, do you have somebody,
That
I
writes
guess,
grants.
yeah, that helps writes grants or has knowledge of grant writing?
Kathy, but she's so overwhelmed, I can't imagine
So,
her taking
the
on
historic
another.
committee and, okay,
And I don't know anything
And
about
Kurt.
grants,
got it, okay,
but I'll help when
So I
I
just
can.
volunteered.
you did,
Fantastic.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Drew, I just want to be clear on the vote for, that was 5-1. You're not doing a letter of support, you're just doing a memo. motion.
Yes, I think a memo is sufficient, right?
Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
In essence, it's whether we call it a memo or a letter, it's a communication that council utilized these funds for that purpose.
I'll have the words, but,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Okay, moving back to the agenda, we have one developer item, the Martin Minor subdivision. Was a request for our review. Basically, it was to parse out 2 additional lots from my read on that. And the large scale plans are here. We all received them through the website. And I know I made sure to come in here a little bit earlier to look at the large scale plans because it is challenging to zoom in on those on the computer, but I did my due diligence on it today as best I could. And then wanted to look at this plan just to be sure that nothing else jumped out at me. So I simply put that on a table for EAC review. I personally didn't see anything that caught my attention. I always look to see if they have sinkhole mitigation plans when they're in carbonates, and they did. So you gather around there. Let me just kick that under with no problem, or pull it out or whatever.
I'm sorry.
Watch the ice, Priscilla.
Drew, I think this is a PennDOT road, probably, so PennDOT would have to approve stuff like that.
You don't have enough road frontage, right? You can't, I don't think you're allowed to do
It's
this.
R40, so they have different.
Say that again?
They have, it's R40 zone, so they have different road frontage
That's
things
what
than
we are.
other places. No, we're
I guess
RA.
it wouldn't be there if it wasn't approved. I
We're
thought you,
RA.
I thought you had to have much more road frontage than that, but.
Is this all wood
Well,
now?
no, it's got a house and then some trees, but that, yeah, this has some dead trees right here, and then this is wooded a little bit back there.
A lot of it's grass.
Maybe I'm missing something. I thought we had to have more road frontage, and I thought a lot had to be at least 2 acres.
That's for RA. This is not RA.
Okay.
This is R40.
I hear you, I just didn't,
That's
I don't
1
know.
acre, 40,000 square feet. Well,
So
and when
I
it
don't
gets
To that level, that's
they're gonna make that
and
call.
zoning.
All we're saying is, do we see any
Yeah,
environmental issues with this property and what's happening, which I don't see
Is there
any.
Water and sewer.
I was gonna say, is there slope?
No,
Doesn't look
it's
like it,
flat.
looks like it's flat.
With the top
Yeah,
graph,
with
it's
this
right
part
behind,
for
isn't it?
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
the
have
contour's right
public water over there.
They have public water.
All that fancy stuff.
This is not being touched.
We have outhouses.
There's a house, existing house and property there.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I mean, there's development all around it, so it's really like, this is, I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
Woodfields is back in there as well.
Mm-hmm. It's probably that over there, yeah.
So it's kind of a minor.
And then
change.
up here would be the power station, it's just
Oh,
up the
yeah,
street.
okay.
Yeah, so if you kept going up here, you know.
Yeah.
I would, it's well and septic, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Right, that's the.
Yeah.
It
No,
strikes me
it's
as a
water-
minor
it's water and
development.
sewer. Oh, that's what I meant. Yeah, it's water and sewer.
Water and sewer.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, this is a whole big giant development. Mm-hmm. This is the,
So they tap in.
Yeah.
this is the, yeah. But environmentally, I didn't see any
If
issues.
it's got well, I mean, if it's got water and sewer.
Yeah, sorry. Water and sewer.
Okay, we get some new neighbor.
And they didn't come forward with an open space assessment request.
This is on this side.
We have enough neighbors.
No, I didn't see any, nothing, no red flags
On the
here.
laptop though.
Okay, so I think in the case of this sort, we basically typically report to council that we have
No
no issues or no comment.
Do
No
we have
comment.
to do a motion on that? That we take no position?
Yeah.
Do we normally do a motion on that, Carol, that we have no comment? No comment is fine. Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. That brings us to updates and reports. I'm not sure that everybody who's listed here to give a report or an update have one, so let's just go through and see. EAC Network Conference, registration.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, we erroneously thought, because last year they had a virtual, like a half day in the spring, and the conference was in the fall. And we made the assumption that they were gonna do that again this year, but we were wrong.
Okay,
So it's only a conference, and it's April 3rd, 4th, and 5th-ish in
Right.
State College University
right,
Park.
that's right, that's the middle of the
So-
week. I looked at my schedule there and,
I'm not 100% sure the dates, but it was
Yeah.
early April, and it was University Park.
yeah, I think it was the 2nd to the 4th.
I think you're right.
I did have it somewhere here. So, yeah, okay. So that's an FYI. Is anybody interested in registering and going to that? No, okay. It's
That's
better when, I mean,
unfortunate.
it is in the Lehigh Valley sometimes. It was last year.
Yeah.
So,
Carol, did we pay the membership? Okay.
okay, good.
Excellent.
Laura Ray, is there a plastic bag update or
I
no?
don't have an update, I don't know. Chad maybe probably knows more where we are with any of the paperwork.
We have our script.
We were gonna divvy up the list last night.
That's our next stop. We're ready to go hit the pavement and
Go
talk to
visit
businesses.
businesses.
It's just a question of getting that scheduled and it's just everybody's.
Right. Well, we're just
Chaos.
coming through a rough period. December, January are
So,
difficult for people.
but we've moved forward on at least the back end of getting the information gathering phase done.
Okay. Date for electronic recycling for 2025. In January, was there a decision made to go ahead with electronic recycling again? Okay. It is a matter of choosing a date. I'm embarrassed to admit, but it's just a fact. I don't recall the date from last year,
It was the end of September.
Yeah.
24th,
Last
something like
weekend of
that.
September.
September. So it's probably something to shoot for on a September annual basis, perhaps, if we're gonna do it.
Make it the end.
The
Okay.
28th, September 28th of 24 is
What
when we
is-
had it.
What's Saturday this year?
Saturday.
Yeah, is it still the 28th?
So as a starting point, Carol, to have you check with the vendor to see what things look like on their schedule towards the end of September as a starting point?
As of last month, they had the whole month open,
Okay,
well, fall was open.
Yeah.
Check. You're looking for,
This on.
You wanna
You're
keep it
looking
the
for the
last-
end of
last
September?
Saturday of the month of
Yeah.
September, and we could set that up, and if everybody knows. when that's
27th?
gonna be.
Is it 27th?
The 27th.
so I guess the simple thing to do is to ask you, Carol, to check with them on that date, and then we'll be able to respond at our next meeting.
Will do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Educational ideas for residents. There was a conversation at last month's meeting, for example, someone brought up apparently asking Hanover to send a hydrologist over here to talk about MS4 education and whether
Yes.
we would ask them to do something on that.
Yes,
Is that what was discussed last?
yes.
And that was a decision, more or less, right? In the affirmative, everyone felt that that was a good idea?
Yeah, that way we could understand what MS4 is and how
Okay.
we benefit, and then some of these programs.
Right, okay, so there again, Carol, that request would be if you could reach out to Hanover and see if one of their engineers or geologists could come over and, to our meeting, one of our upcoming meetings, and give us a presentation on MS4, informational presentation. Okay, good.
Hang on a second. There was also, I'm sorry, Chad, excuse me.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure, can I just butt right in.
Yeah.
It just, it popped in my head, the MS4. We also wanted Carol, the industry, it's like the people that do the methane gas, we wanted them to come and explain what they do.
Okay,
Remember we were talking about, you know, how does it work, what does it do, why does it go off, but, you know, explain the whole process to us.
The gas discharge from the landfill,
Correct.
Okay,
and, yes.
That's a private company that manages that one little piece of the
Okay.
landfill. They're the ones that built the plant, that burned the methane, and they did come to a council meeting, that's how it started, to explain to the council what it does, how it works, the whole 9 yards. So we asked to have them come back and speak to the EAC so we understand a little
I
bit
mean,
better.
you also presented, or shared that document about landfill gas generation.
Well, that was something else,
Yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
yes.
So, okay, so there again, Carol, if we could ask you to, or whoever's appropriate, to check with them, see if they have a representative that could give us a presentation on that. And then we find out what their response is.
I'll see.
They were at a council meeting, not
I
that
thought it
long
was
ago.
discussed that Laura would actually do both of those things for MS4 and for the ARPA, but
Yeah,
I'll talk to Kathy tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, can't somebody on this committee take that?
I wouldn't know where to start.
I'm sorry?
Can somebody on the committee take that responsibility? I mean, staff is kind of short-staffed. So I feel like dumping more things on them, I think, I personally,
I wouldn't know how to start myself.
Well, one of the questions would be, you know, township council, I mean, the township would have contacts and names and so
I mean,
forth.
I can call Brian. I don't know who the MS4 person would be, maybe Brian
Probably.
himself. I can
was that
call,
something you'd
Okay,
be willing to do?
will
I
you
just
do
think-
that then, Laura?
and I'd need to get a name for Archaea.
Maybe Kathy can
They
give you
would-
those names.
I know they want to invite them to landfill committee meetings, so I don't know.
Good, kill two birds with one stone. Perfect.
Well, I wasn't doing that, but somebody was. Okay.
And then Chad, did you have a report on Lehigh Valley EAC?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to talk about, actually. First, on the prior topic of D, where we have the educational ideas for residents, I'd like to say that the Penn State Extension is having a residential stormwater solutions, the power of rain gardens webinar, which I have registered for. It's on February 27th at 12 p.m. I don't know what a rain garden is. I'm going to learn about it.
I was gonna say, Alan talked about those and he said you need an engineer because they're very complicated.
So
Attended, it would be wonderful.
that's my plan.
We talked
So,
about that last.
in tandem to this, I would like to, just bring attention that I was accepted into the Master Watershed Steward Program with Penn State.
Yay!
We start that next week,
No, we
basically.
started on Thursday.
Well, Thursday, there's an orientation session.
And I'll be there
All
as
right.
a graduate,
Yes.
so I'll be there.
I heard you'd be involved. So
Towards
Shannon
you.
and Rebecca,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
awesome.
we'll see where this leads.
It's great.
To learn more about watersheds for myself and be able to, be more educated in our conversations.
Oh, that's great.
And get involved in volunteer efforts if possible. We'll see where it goes. What was
By
the
the
other?
way, I did the water testing,
Me too.
Me
and
too.
that was wonderful.
Me too.
Oh,
I
you
learned
did
stuff.
it.
I did, and
Yeah.
actually, my results are in my email tonight.
Nice.
And they're
Water.
awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, so
My
thank
well's
you.
perfect.
Are you good?
I
Perfect.
just mailed mine today, so.
Well, that's great. Again, when I tried
Yeah.
to sign up, it said that it was full. So,
Because
that's
they
right, you
sent
did
you,
say that.
that's why. I didn't know I was getting a free water sample test, but
yeah,
that's
right.
why.
They have a limit.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep my eye out. I get the
It was
emails
great.
every day from Penn State now for all of their different topics. I've signed up for so many. And moving then into the Lehigh Valley EAC thing. So I reached out to Lauren House, who came here and did her presentation initially. She was the intern there. It turns out that her internship, she's a student at Muhlenberg College, her internship has ended. So she's not on the EAC anymore. So then I reached out to the rest of the list that was on there. I got a reply from Tinku Kanwalker, which said did not make any further progress on this. We believe our ball is in the court to use the survey information in further discussion with Carolyn Grayshaw at We Can Serve PA.
Carol's gone.
Which I'll get to. And then, so that's one thing. And then somebody, Ian Kindle from Easton, said Carol's no longer with We Can Serve. Chad, let us know if you would like to join a call, the LVEAC Steering Committee on February 18th at 7 p.m. We may discuss this further. February 18th at 7 p.m. And then they also sent me a link. This is Celia Williams sent a link to invite us to the Palmer Township Earth Day celebration hosted by Palmer Township Environmental Steering Committee, Saturday, April 19th, 2025, 10 to 2 at Fairview Park in Easton. And there is a link here in Facebook for that event. So just as an FYI, that's coming up, which makes me even more motivated to ask, let's get our calendar together. If Palmer Township has their Earth Day already lined up, why aren't we doing this? I mean, anyways, so that's that. That's my update on the EAC. I'll keep poking at it.
Good job.
It kind of died a little bit, but
But you know,
we'll see.
We got a request from the Allentown EAC last month to support Allentown, remember?
Yes, we did.
So they sent that to us, so that's another contact person, perhaps?
Yeah, I'll look at that one. I'll look into that email again and reach out to them.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For the reminder.
You're welcome.
Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, Jennifer?
That's not me.
Oh.
That's always Alan.
Alan.
I don't know
okay,
why
right,
that
right.
had me, but I just let it be because I knew Alan would
Okay,
be
and that was a
here.
report, yeah,
God bless them.
okay. All right, then, we have no public comment. Township correspondence, one was, we don't ever share the names, but the open space property that we evaluated on Orchard Lane and recommended for assessment was assessed, and the landowner chose not
You mean
to enter the open space.
2024-2.
Oh, yeah, so the property was 2024-2, but we have several properties in that general area.
But they chose not to go into open space?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, they chose not to enter the program. And then we also, with our packet, received the memo regarding the timber harvest that will take place. I think it's taking place now, actually, into August, I believe, and through the summer on the Hellertown Borough Authority property. So those plans were in the packet. I reviewed them. They're following best practices, and again, I have utmost confidence that one of the members of the Hellertown Borough Authority has the same expertise as me and is one of the more morally upstanding people I know. And I know that he was very concerned about impacts, hydrological and so forth. And this passed muster with him, and I went to their presentation back at the grist mill. Gosh, that was, what, a year, 2 years ago? Yeah, so I think their plan looks good. And once again, I think the township really can't regulate logging the way they did in the past. And it appears to me, just driving around, that there's a fair amount of logging going on right now. Some of it for the better. We all know about the blight killing a lot of the trees, and we all have ash trees falling down on our roads and houses and in our yards. So some of this might be quite helpful, actually.
Well, at this point, is any of the logging, any of the takedown of ash even really considered logging? At this point, virtually everything's dead. It's not usable wood.
Yeah.
It's mostly just clearing at this point.
Right, but getting those out of the way and so forth is probably helpful. And so with that, that would lead us to review of minutes. I submitted changes. Chad submitted some changes.
No,
No, you didn't?
Winfield.
Oh, Winfield did, okay,
I didn't
yes.
have any. You didn't have
Okay,
any.
so did anybody have any other changes? Someone indicated they did not.
That was Laura.
I have no changes to any of the prior minutes.
Okay, so as we shared those amendments, then are we ready to approve the minutes as amended? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to a moment where someone might make a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody. This, I was a bit nervous when I saw all the files, that this was gonna be a meeting we couldn't get through, but a lot of them were non-actionable items. Thank you, Carol.
Did you